Raw, real, and just a little dangerous. This is Feral.
Hosting an event like this will really show you the words and phrases that you overuse. And I've noticed that I have said that everyone is incomparable and that every one of these protocols has changed my life. And I'm starting to sound like ChatGPT on how everything's a groundbreaking journey and that we're ready to do everything. But I got to be real with y'all. These people are incomparable. That's why I've kept them in my life for so dang long. And this work really has, I could say, changed my life in a lot of different ways, but this work specifically changed my health at a time when I really needed it. And this is not about me, this is about all of us. But came to Laura. Laura and I had previously been friends. She had been my client. And I came to her as a client when autoimmune stuff was ravaging my body. And Laura really quite literally nursed me back to health with this, with her support and also with this practicum. So it is an absolute pleasure to welcome back to the Feral stage my dear, dear friend and my own coach, Laura B. Folks, queen of all the things you're about to see. So Laura, thank you for being here and thank you for all you've done in my own life.
Thank you. So glad to be here. Excited to bring this content to everybody. So I'm excited to share a bit today about how your business is keeping you emotionally hungry and connecting if you ever find yourself being lifted or carried into the kitchen or the pantry and are mindlessly snacking or anything like that. We're going to really dive into how that isn't really a lack of willpower or discipline, and how is it potentially that there's things that are happening in your business and how you're feeling in your business or relating to your business that is leading to that. So type it in the chat. We'll do a little bit of a poll of what are some of the reasons that you currently believe you fall off track with food. And just type in which letter resonates most with you. And if all of these do, type in D. If there's something else that's coming up for you, go ahead and type in E. And I am going to find the chat. Okay, so all right, Annie says all of them. And Nestle Crunch, love that. D is all of the above. Anybody else have anything else coming up for you? A, C, and E, great. All, C, great. And today we're going to dive into a little bit more about debunking some of this, really. It is, I don't really believe in lack of willpower, because there's usually, I'm guessing that you are, especially as a business owner, you're probably disciplined in so many areas of your life. So why is it around food that seems to kind of go away? So without further ado, we will talk a little bit, just to share a little bit about what we're going to talk about. I'm going to share a little bit about my background and my journey and how I got to become a health coach. And then we'll talk about the hidden triggers that cause irresistible cravings, why emotional eating actually makes sense. A lot of times people will say, I don't understand, it doesn't seem to make any sense. And there's actually good reason for it. So we're going to dive a little bit deeper into what that's all about. Then we'll have time for some Q&A. As I'm going through the content, if there are questions, you can type them in the chat. I'm not sure I'm going to see them with everything that's going on, but I will try to get to them. And if not, then I'll get to them after I go through all the content. And then we'll wrap up at the end with next steps too. So to share a bit about me and how I got to where I am, my weight struggle started at the age of 12, and I went to my first Weight Watchers meeting when I was 13 with my parents. And through the years, I would lose weight, but then I would gain it all back. And typically not just what I had lost, but also more than that. Ultimately, it took me about 5 years and 3 different approaches, but I lost 60 pounds in 2008, and I've kept it off since then. Back then, when I was going through my weight loss journey, it really helped me to view the changes that I was making as a lifestyle change as opposed to a diet. And the reason that made a difference was because I ensured that I never felt deprived in the process, so that I would stick with it long term. Because previously, when I had done different diets, I was in an all or nothing and would either be all on or all off and was feeling really deprived. So when I was able to shift that made a big difference. And also making small changes along the way and incremental changes so that it would be sustainable also made a difference. As I was going through the last year of my weight loss journey, I had been working in advertising and found colleagues and friends and family coming to me for advice and guidance as they were going through their weight loss journeys as well. So when I was exploring what I wanted to do next, that memory really kept coming up for me when I started to think about my purpose and passion. I ended up learning about health coaching in 2013 and decided to get my certification from the Institute for Integrative Nutrition. While I was studying for my certification, even though I was maintaining my weight, I was doing what I called working the system, where I'd eat well for a while, then say screw it, eat whatever I wanted. Then I would have to rein it in again, get back on track. And something for some reason was stopping me from consistently sticking with it and being able to not be so consumed by the thought of food. So I started working with my own health coach to explore my relationship and patterns around food. And that's when I realized and learned that I was using food to center safety. And also, I thought that being bullied in middle school and high school just made me stronger, and I had moved on from that. But I didn't realize how much that was still impacting me as an adult, and especially around food. Every time I felt misunderstood, I would turn to food. And that's when I connected that my eating was really connected with safety, not necessarily willpower, because I did think I was lacking willpower at that time. And so it made a lot of sense when I thought back to why my sister and I would come home from school and we would order a Domino's pizza. We would finish that off, and then we hid that from my parents. So we would have to finish our dinners in the evening as well, even though we were already stuffed. So the clients that I work with now typically feel hopeless around food and their bodies. And so I support them to feel more in control over their eating, and then also more comfortable and confident in their own skin. Going through this process myself was life-changing, and my clients also experience the same thing and feel like they're being set free from a decades-long food battle. So let's dive into the 4 triggers that cause irresistible cravings. Each of us is typically triggered by different emotions based on our past and who we are, but I have found that there are 4 common core emotions that make us feel at risk and lead to emotional eating. So when someone finds themselves in front of the fridge not knowing why they're eating, or they want to make an unaligned choice for their health goals, like working more instead of getting in their workout, I give them the TAIL tool to check in with what emotion they're feeling. And TAIL stands for feeling tired, anxious. And with anxious, that's often uncertainty that comes from the outside, which I'll dive into a little bit more in the next few slides. Then there's inadequate, which is uncertainty from the inside, and lonely. And lonely is really about our social needs not getting met, which I'll get into a bit more. The big thing that we really want to focus on is self-awareness, not self-monitoring. A lot of times people come to me saying that I'm very self-aware, I'm very aware of what I'm eating, the food I'm putting in my mouth, but really they're self-monitoring. So self-monitoring is when we are focusing on how you are around food, versus self-awareness is what is being triggered in me that is leading me to turn to food. So let's break down each of these a bit further. And Annie, I love that you thought that you were just tired, but then realized that there was more there. So with tired, this is not just about sleep. It's really about being depleted from the endless productivity grind. And that can be holding a lot emotionally, physically, and then also overfunctioning. It also is a general feeling of fatigue and exhaustion. And we can become exhausted with our preoccupation of food. I don't know about you, but when I was struggling with my relationship with food, I would think about food so much and thinking, should I eat this? Shouldn't I eat this? Going out to a meal, I would have to plan and prepare of what am I going to order? And then even what if I get hungry when I'm out and I'm without any food? What am I going to do then? And that food noise and that preoccupation with food can become really exhausting. Also, white knuckling cravings can be exhausting. So when thinking about like, oh, I really want that Ben & Jerry's that's in the freezer, but I shouldn't eat that. I'm not even hungry. Do I really want that? That can lead to some of this exhaustion as well. And so battling food is its own source of exhaustion. And this tired trigger leads to our 3 o'clock chocolate craving, or eating chocolate at 3 o'clock. And part of that is because food, especially sugar, overrides our body's need for rest, and it helps us to power through. When we feel tired, this is when the I deserve it eating tends to come up. And I deserve this eating often comes up after pushing through. It can come up with our needs not getting met and not getting as much enjoyment or fulfillment that you crave or that you needed. When we're so tired, the idea becomes Netflix and chill instead of getting replenishing rest. So that's when we collapse on the couch, watch Netflix, have some wine, have some snacks. And that's where we are trying to get rest, but it's not really it's missing the mark often. So type in the chat if you can relate to this trigger at all, if this one resonates with you. Great, I see that this is resonating with people. Okay, so with anxious, with this one, this is uncertainty that's coming from the outside. And it can be around food where you can think, will there be anything I want to eat that I can eat, or if there's enough options? So if you're going to a social gathering or a work event, there might be some anxiety around that. It can also be around your body and uncertainty of changes that you're experiencing without knowing why they're happening. And feeling like maybe you haven't changed anything, but your weight keeps creeping up. It could be that what used to not stress your body now stresses it out. And that happened for me around alcohol, where alcohol never really agreed with me that well, but I could drink a little bit. And it hit a point where having even one, maybe 2 glasses of wine with dinner, it really throws off my sleep. And I don't sleep well. I have heart palpitations. I might get super hot and sweaty. And so like what used to be okay with my body now really stresses it out, especially when it comes to alcohol and even sugar sometimes. These tail triggers also register a lot more in our systems and can create some of the anxiety. And we really need to get into our bodies and figure out why we're going to do this and work towards our goals beyond just weight loss. It doesn't mean that weight loss can't happen, but it can be really helpful to be in our bodies and figure out what feels good for us in our lives right now. And that can change at any point too, because life shifts a lot and we can go through different seasons of life. And so that can change. And we really want to reorient signals of safety, which can include both physical and emotional safety. Emotional safety is what we're really talking about today in terms of these triggers. And if you center safety, changes may go slower, but you'll feel better in the process. Also, the anxious trigger can come up around your business. Because there's so much uncertainty in our business, it can lead us to feeling anxious. Also, transitions can bring up this anxious trigger, like switching tasks, going from work to home after your kids go to bed. What ends up happening is that our emotions that we've pushed through all day come up in these spaces. Our emotions aren't going to surface unless we have space, especially a safe space. And so for those who are struggling with emotional eating, emotions only feel safe when we're alone. And that's why more tips around how to eat, not eat, or drink at night don't work. It's not because it's nighttime, it's because you're alone and it's a safe space. This trigger can be brought on by food scarcity, unpredictability, which there's so much happening right now, not only in so many people's businesses, but collectively, there's a lot of unpredictability. And then a jumble of feelings. And when we're feeling anxious, we can't necessarily articulate what's happening underneath it. And then it all comes up, or we don't want to feel it. And so we eat to push that down. So for inadequate, this is often a shocker for many people, as they don't think that they'd be the ones to feel inadequate. Most people are confident in many ways, but then there's certain areas or places, maybe even some projects, where they might feel not good enough, not enough, or there's a risk of being seen as inadequate or failing. So as I mentioned earlier, this is uncertainty that comes from the inside. And that is when we think, am I being too much? Am I not enough? And it can come out in food, but it's not really about the food. What you'll see here is the theme that the food is more of the symptom that these triggers are coming up. And when it comes out in food, that's where it's like, what's my problem? Why can't I resist my cravings? Why does everyone else have a normal relationship with food and I don't? Also, when we're not following a plan to a T or not getting the weight loss that we want fast enough, then we might think I'm not doing enough. And the things that were supposed to help us become a source of inadequacy. My clients are also often perfectionists and think that if I'm not perfect, then screw it. And then they don't do whatever it is that they're working on because they'll feel like I'm inadequate if I can't do it perfectly. And think about that in your business. Is there ever a time where it's like, oh, I can't do that perfectly, and so I'm just going to put it off? Or maybe you eat your way through the procrastination that might be coming up as well. We make it that we're inadequate, not that we have unrealistic expectations. And that can happen with food and exercise, with work, aging, parenting, and especially in our businesses. Have you ever had a client session that didn't go great, and then you make it mean that you didn't do enough or aren't enough? And then did you end up eating after that, or eating your way through even some of those feelings that might have been coming up? And also procrastination eating. This is when we need to figure out how to finish something and do it perfectly. And so we eat while we're figuring out how to gear up for that. And this inadequate trigger can come up with feeling high maintenance with food. It can come up when we feel like we have needs at all, waiting on our weight, or waiting on the perfect conditions to just get started with something or to take action. And this is when we doubt ourselves to be able to be in the complexity of the messiness of imperfection. So again, type a Y in the chat if this inadequate trigger resonates with you. And then for lonely, even though we might have a great support system or be surrounded by people we love, we can still feel isolated, alone, or lonely. And this can either be from a lack of connection or being around people where you feel you have to be on instead of yourself. And going back, some of these triggers can work together too, because when we feel like we have to be on instead of ourselves, that can lead to that tired trigger, because emotionally we're expending so much energy trying to be accepted and liked that then it just depletes us so much. With lonely also, this can be where we might think I'm the only one struggling with this food, my body, and stuff like that. And there can be shame around that. And so then we eat alone because we're feeling this lonely trigger. And there can be shame about the shame. So shame can also be really hard to identify, but it makes us feel really alone. We also can feel alone or separated from the body that we once knew as we age and our bodies change. I hear it so often from clients where they're like, if only I could go back like 10 years ago or 5 years ago, even though they weren't necessarily happy with their body back then, they felt better about their body then and wish they could get back to that. And so there can be some comparison and feeling separate from themselves, even or past version of themselves. We can also feel separate beyond food or weight, and that can be in social situations or at work. And we overeat in social situations because we don't feel supported in the way that you support other people. So if there's ever a time where you are the listening ear and are there to support somebody else, and then maybe you shove down and don't speak up and share what's actually happening for you because you don't want to be a burden, that is where we can feel separate and alone as well. We might also be overstimulated in social situations and then lose connection to our body and our sense of satisfaction. And then we can also overeat to not say the thing that you want to say. So you might be at a dinner with friends or family or even some clients, and you might have something that you might think is funny that you want to share, but you may not say it, or you might feel like it might not land right. So you just stuff down and eat or drink to not say something that's on your mind. We can also feel separate as entrepreneurs with the people in our lives who might work in corporate and don't fully understand what you do and how hard running a business can be. I've even experienced that with my family who don't necessarily understand what it's like to be an entrepreneur. And this trigger can cause us to eat when we don't feel at home in our bodies, or we eat when we're out, but then wait to eat what we really want when we get home and when we're alone. And that can be either from feeling like you don't want to stand out, or feeling like I'm going to eat like the healthy thing and the healthy choice when I'm out, but then that's not necessarily what you really wanted. It's more of you didn't want to be judged for what you were going to eat. So then when you get home, one of my clients explained it as like described it as a food monster that would come over her when she would get home, and she would eat either another dinner or even multiple desserts when she would get home. And then there's secret eating that can come up too. So now that we know what the triggers are, why does our emotional eating actually make sense? Our unaligned eating choices aren't bad habits, they're protective choices. And these tail triggers signal to your system that your belonging or your goodness is at risk. If you look high maintenance, that registers as that's not good. Or if you're a burden, that doesn't come off as good. Or you don't want to do the wrong thing and you want to make the right choice so that you're emotionally safe. This is all language that we use when we don't know if we'll be emotionally safe in situations. Emotional safety and belonging is a sense that you'll be supported, not judged. So when we're making a food choice, if you ever have to make a food choice for your health and somebody judges you for being high maintenance, that is when we feel like we don't belong and are emotionally unsafe. Versus when somebody witnesses you and is there with you and says, wow, that has to be so hard. That's the belonging that we're talking about. Belonging means that you're allowed to be needy or even have needs, even if you're an outsider. When thinking, why am I self-sabotaging? I really want you to understand that you're actually trying to protect yourself when you're eating out of alignment with your goals, whether that's binge eating, emotionally eating, stress eating, boredom eating. It's actually trying to protect you. And you're trying to feel like you have a sense of belonging. And I'm going to leave a little cliffhanger here. If you're curious about how these tail triggers show up for you, tomorrow during the implementation day, we're going to dive deeper into connecting these triggers with your business and your eating. And also I'm going to dive a little bit deeper into this belonging piece to make more connections and to clarify that even further and really see how all of this shows up in your business. So I think Annie's going to type it in the chat. I can also type the link in the chat for implementation day if you're interested in joining us tomorrow for that. But yes, Annie's going to drop that in. What questions do you have? I know that there's been some stuff going on in the chat. I've missed quite a bit. So if there's anything, either Annie, if you want to come back on at this point, feel free. And if you saw anything in the chat, we can talk through that. Or if anybody has any questions, feel free to drop them in now.
Hey, babe. You know, we had a lot of the idea was about this idea of deprivation, right? Like to do it or to not do it. And I know in my own work with you, you never once made me feel crappy. And you not making me feel crappy makes me not feel crappy when I'm like, oh, I'm going to snack during this because I've been hosting a festival for 2 days. But I ate a portion of chips. So I told everybody in the chat about the chips, but I ate a portion of chips. And I'm telling you on a live camera because I know that you're not going to care because I wanted those dang chips. Right. And so I ate some chips and not having emotion about the chips other than laughing to be like, oh my God, I'm eating chips off camera during my own festival while my dear one and food coach is talking about these things. But you know, I think it's so interesting. Tail is just such a revolutionary concept when applied to these things because those emotions can shape shift as other emotions. Like I said in the chat, like I thought I was tired and I was tired. But what was actually putting my hand back in the bowl over and over and over was this idea of I'm so tired because I'm not enough.
Yep. Yeah, these triggers can lead to that for sure. And there's nuance around this. And I love how you were talking about with the chips. The whole idea is like, once we have clarity and awareness of these triggers, and this is scratching the surface, there's a lot of layers to our eating and emotional hunger. But even just having clarity and awareness around it can bring more neutrality and get us out of that self-judgment and have more of that awareness of like, oh, I see what I'm doing here. Because there's no food that's really good or bad, right? And I still eat chips and pizza and cookies and stuff, but there's more neutrality around it. And that's what you're describing, is having that neutrality. And also sometimes, like right now, you're kind of strapped to your desk. And so if chips is the only thing that you're able to get, okay, cool, eat the chips. Doesn't matter.
I want to make sure that we address something happening in the chat before I lose you, before we all bop over to Keisha. Very awesome, vulnerable chat happening about what about the memories of mom and mom telling you you're fat, mom telling you, I mean, I know this one too. Do you want to touch in like a minute on the relationship with story? And Mary says, absolutely resonate with this, judgy, though often well meaning but completely counterproductive moms. To those of us who have weird food fucked up relationships because of our mothers, hey, again, it's me. Hi, on the problem. It's me. Moms, stories, give us like the mic drop.
Parents, families, yes. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot there, and we do dive into that a little bit more because that does bring up some of the socialization. And also, there's not going to be able to do this in like 30 seconds, but there's a lot. There's a lot of like the relating to food and ourselves and with our parents, but there's conditioning that comes up, and a lot of stuff that happens in our house in our childhood does still show up today around food as well. This isn't really about that, but I do want to share that there's a workbook if you want to connect some of these triggers, and we are going to dive into this more, and you can get live coaching tomorrow to connect.
Well, who knows what their mothers have been saying about their career choices, Laura?
Yeah. Yes. And also thinking about like when your mom was telling you you ate too much, did that trigger any of these tail triggers as well? Yes. And VJ said also in adulthood, one of my parents commented on my body just not too long ago. So yeah, old habits don't die hard when it comes to parents. Tina said, my mom told me that she would be proud to point me out on the street if I was thinner. Yeah, I hear it so often where there was either shaming around our bodies, and it makes sense. Something that came up a lot for me in my business even is when there was a lot of new levels of uncertainty. Even though I had done a lot of work around my emotional eating, my body became the dumping ground for the uncertainty and vulnerability that I was feeling in my business. So that's when I would get into places where I would wake up in the morning, feel good in my clothes, feel like I looked good. And then like 2 hours later, I'd be like, oh my God, I'm fat. I need to lose weight. And thinking about what diet I need to start or something like that. And it makes sense because my body was the focus often from being bullied, and even from my parents as well, saying that my body was wrong or bad. And so then I would internalize that, and any level of uncertainty or vulnerability, it felt like it's the one thing that I could fix with my body. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff, and we carry weight with us from the past, and especially from things that might have happened in our childhood homes as well. Thank you all for sharing some of these vulnerable things, and hopefully this has been helpful. If you could use some support and would like to talk through a little bit more one-on-one about anything that has come up for you, we can always chat during a curiosity call as well.
Raw, real, and just a little dangerous. This is feral.